A very good morning to one and all present here. I, Sanjukta Bakchi, am delighted to welcome you all for today's session on restarting the Asian century after COVID-19 by our honorable guest, Professor John West. We thank him immensely for taking out time from his busy schedule to address our new batch of PGDM students. Professor John West is the Executive Director of Asian Century Institute, which conducts research and analysis and participates in policy dialogues to foster a better understanding of the opportunities and challenges of the Asian century. Professor West has a Master in Economics from the University of New South Wales, Australia. He is also an adjunct professor at Tokyo's Sophia University, where he teaches Asian economic development and Japanese business and economy. He has previously served as Head of Public Affairs at the OECD, Director of Balance of Payments at the Australian Treasury, and was also the Senior Consultant for Capacity Building and Training at the Asian Development Bank Institute. He also taught globalization at the Paris-based institute d'Etudes Politiques, the Paris Institute of Political Studies, commonly known as Sciences Po. His latest book is Asian Century on a Knife Edge, a 360-degree analysis of Asia's recent economic development. Sir, it gives me immense pleasure to request you to address the gathering.
So thank you very much for the kind words of introduction. It's a great honor and a privilege for me to be speaking to you today. Last year, I think in November, I visited your institute. I discovered what a wonderful institute it is, and with a great staff of professors and a great group of students there. So I'm really honored to be speaking to you today. I can say to you first, good morning in Kolkata, but I should also say that greetings from Sydney, Australia, where it's already in the afternoon, because we have 4 hours time difference. I'm sitting here in Sydney, Australia, on the south side of Sydney, and two very famous Australian people live nearby to me. One is Steve Waugh, and the other is Steve Smith. And my friends in India may have heard of these two people who are very famous Australian cricketers who live nearby. And sometimes when I go shopping, I can even bump into Steve Waugh in the shops. Of course, I don't speak to him because that would be impolite, but this is the part of town I'm in. So to all the students who are listening today, congratulations to you all for enrolling in the postgraduate diploma in management at the International Management Institute in Kolkata. The International Management Institute is one of the world's leading management schools. And so I'm sure that your postgraduate diploma in management will help you all become very successful managers and entrepreneurs in your career, and will help India become one of the leading countries in the Asian century. As you start your studies this year now in 2020, the world economy and the world in general is in a really terrible situation. The worst situation, I think, since World War II. COVID-19 virus is inflicting great damage on our economies, societies, politics, international relations, all over the world. Indeed, India, your wonderful country, a country I've visited 7 times and a country I love very much, is suffering greatly. And now as you start your studies, maybe it's difficult to think of a future after COVID-19. But in fact, one day, both India and the world will recover from COVID-19. The world has been through many disasters and many problems in the past, and always we recover from that. And I'm hoping that when you finish your postgraduate diploma in management in 2 years' time, the world will be very much in a recovery phase from the virus. And you, students today, in 2 years' time, hopefully you'll become dynamic young managers. You'll be in a position to make and shape this new period in Indian and world history. Already, before COVID-19, India had become one of the world's leading economies, and your country has enormous potential to lead the world into the Asian century. And so looking ahead after COVID-19, the challenge before all of us, including yourselves as young managers, is how to restart the Asian century after COVID-19. So I think that we should look forward to the future with excitement at this new challenge, even though today things are very difficult. So today in my lecture, I'm going to speak about 3 topics. Firstly, I'd like to review Asia's economic development over recent decades, what's been happening in the past. Secondly, I will draw some lessons from the COVID-19 pandemic, lessons that help us maybe do better after the pandemic. And thirdly, I will offer a few thoughts about the world after COVID-19, this being the world where you will be entering as new managers. So topic number 1, economic development in recent decades. Over the past 70 years, we have seen the re-emergence of Asia as a leading power in the world economy. Many people say that the 21st century will become the Asian century, led by India and China, the 2 giants of Asia. In fact, as we look back over the past 2,000 years of world history, Asia was the leading economy for most of that time, led by India and China. Then, about 200 years ago, the West, Europe, North America, rose in importance. In the West, of course, we had the Industrial Revolution that gave a big boost. Secondly, Western colonialism and decolonization caused lots of challenges and problems in many Asian countries, especially in India. Then, of course, we had the World Wars. But after World War II, Asia gradually started to come back, started to re-emerge. Japan was the first Asian country to really come back. Japan led the way in Asia. It became the world's 2nd biggest economy in 1968. It hosted the Olympic Games in 1964, less than 20 years after the end of the Second World War. Japan became a major force in the motor vehicle and electronics industries, with companies like Toyota, Sony, Panasonic. But importantly for students of management like yourselves, Japan also became a leader in new management practices. You may have heard about Kaizen, continuous improvement. Toyota was very important in developing Kaizen as a new management practice. Just-in-time inventory management, lean manufacturing. So I hope in your studies you'll learn something about the Japanese management practices that helped Japan do so well after the Second World War. Because when we're studying management, we shouldn't only study the management success in countries like America or Europe. Many Asian countries have much to teach us too. And so Japan proved that a catch-up economy, an economy coming from behind, could actually become an innovative, creative world leader. After Japan, we saw the rise of Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. In the 1950s, Korea was poorer than most African countries. But already today, it's an advanced democracy. Samsung is a symbol of the rise of Korea. It was founded as a grocery trading store in 1938, trading noodles and other goods. Today, Korea is one of the world's most innovative, high-tech economies. And Samsung highlights the importance of entrepreneurship and innovation and drivers of the economy. I know that when I visited India, Samsung was very present in your country. I think that for students of management, Samsung is a great case to look at about how companies like Samsung can help drive a country forward. After those 4 economies, we've seen the rise of a number of countries in Southeast Asia: Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, and of course China. What has been unique about these countries has been the development of global supply chains. Some people say global value chains. These have revolutionized the way we do business. They've revolutionized globalization, as different parts of a production process is located in different countries. My favorite example is the example of the iPhone. When I teach in Tokyo, I always ask my students, where is the iPhone made? They always say China. And of course, that's not true. The iPhone is designed in America, in California. High-tech components come from Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Germany, and so on. And the iPhone is assembled in China. This whole process is known as a global supply chain, global value chains. And I'm sure that in your studies, in your studying management, you'll learn more about global supply chains as being a very important part of the modern way of doing business. My good friend, the IMI Kolkata director, Aaron Dumbanik, has explained to me, in fact, that this way of doing business through global supply chains is, in fact, what Asia has been doing for many, many years, long before Western countries discovered such a way of doing business. And he explained it to me as being the decentralized business model, and that this is more efficient than wholly integrated business. So there's lots to learn there, even from India, how business was done in the past. And the last case I'd like to highlight as we look at what's happened in the past in Asia is, of course, the case of India. And of course, over the last 30 years, one of the most exciting developments in the world has been the re-emergence of India as a global economic power. India's development has, of course, been unique. What has been unique in India has been the rise of the IT services industry, sometimes called business process outsourcing. This has been driving the Indian economy forward, and I visited, in fact, Bengaluru, as you say, which is part of the capital of that in India, a few years ago, and it's amazing to see the fantastic development that you have there in India. And of course, India has some wonderful companies that are involved in this part of the economy. Companies like Infosys, Wipro, Tata. And I'm sure that some of you will be working for these companies in the future and helping India develop even more rapidly as a dynamic economy. India is also, and many people in the West at least are not aware of this, India has also been very successful in the pharmaceutical area. And of course, with the COVID virus, India has an important role to play as a manufacturer of pharmaceuticals, medical devices, and other such things. But if I could make a slight criticism of India's development, which I think is important for my Indian friends to know, is that India has not been very successful in developing labour-intensive manufacturing. And India has a large amount of lower skilled workers, and India hasn't been creating enough jobs for these people, and India needs to do more to develop labour-intensive manufacturing. In fact, manufacturing exports have been falling as a share of total exports in India. And in fact, Bangladesh is overtaking India when it comes to textiles, garments, and footwear. That's just a minor point. And so, and the last thing I'd like to mention when we're looking back to the past, the rapid economic development that we've seen in Asia has been changing the human lives immensely. And human lives have been improving very much, and poverty has been reduced greatly. So this has all been very good for our friends in Asia. And so, over the last 7 decades, actually, Asia has been developing very, very rapidly. And so many people, including myself, talk about Asia being the world being on the verge of an Asian century. And so until COVID-19 hit us 6 months ago, this is the world we were looking at, a world where the Asian century seemed to be unstoppable. So I'd now like to move on to section 2 of my talk. This is about COVID-19, the virus that's hitting all of our countries and causing so much problems. COVID-19 actually has hit the world as a big shock. I remember in January I was teaching in Tokyo, and we heard some news about it happening, and we thought maybe it's just a little virus, and no one imagined the effect that it would actually have. It took many countries some time to actually wake up and see what really is happening and how dramatic this is. And today in the world we have about 18 million people infected by the virus. That's a lot of people. In Australia, our total population is only 25 million. So 18 million people infected, and 700,000 people have died. The countries where the biggest cases of COVID are the US and Brazil. India is number 3 up. It's very unfortunate to say. And I really have deep feelings for my friends in India who are suffering from the virus in India. The effect on the world economy has also been dramatic. Organisations like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank are forecasting that the world economy might contract by 5% or more this year. That is just shocking compared with the growth rates we have had over the last half century. According to the World Bank, India's economy might shrink by 9% this year and a further 3% next year. You will probably be able to help me more and correct those figures if you think so. And so the short answer in looking at this is that the idea of an Asian century now seems under threat by COVID-19. Our belief, our observation that this century will become an Asian century, it seemed pretty sure just 6 months ago. Now we wonder, will the 21st century really be an Asian century? Now, in looking at some of the effects of COVID-19, the virus, I think there are a number of lessons that we can already draw about the effect of COVID-19. The first lesson I would say is that although countries like India, Indonesia, and other Asian countries have seen poverty fall dramatically as the economies have developed, many people are still living near poverty, just above the poverty line. And they are easily kicked back into poverty by the crisis. And so this shows that although Asia's development and India's development has been very excellent over the last few decades, it is still a fragile development, and much more needs to be done to develop our Asian economies. So, first point, the fragile state of development, many people living in near poverty. The second point I'd like to mention is that although we've had a dramatic reduction in poverty in Asia, many Asian countries still have weak health systems. People might have more money in their pocket each day, but many countries still have weak health systems. India, for example, spends less than 4% of its GDP on healthcare. That's quite simply not enough. A country like Australia spends about 10%. A country like the US spends 18%. And we need to have strong health systems to be able to respond to a pandemic like COVID-19. And even in 2 years' time, if COVID-19 is behind us, if we've recovered, there will be other pandemics coming in the future. This is not the first pandemic, it won't be the last. So our governments have to do much more to develop our healthcare systems. The third point I'd like to talk about is urbanization. Now, one of the great things about Asia's development has been the movement of people from the country to the cities. This brings many economic efficiencies, but one of the downsides, one of the negative sides of urbanization is that many countries have large slum populations. And in India, you have a number of cities which are very densely populated, very crowded with people, cities like Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai, New Delhi. And of course, in these densely populated cities with lots of slums, something like the COVID-19 can infect many, many people very quickly. And so the lesson of this is that looking ahead, governments have to take urbanization much more seriously than they have in the past. Urban planning needs to be done much more seriously. And maybe we need to have smaller cities which are much more manageable. So urbanization is the key point. The next point I'd like to talk about is, the nature of government in our countries. In a country like Australia or the US, people often debate about whether democracy is good or whether an authoritarian government like China is good. And I think, that's an interesting debate. But what COVID-19 has taught us is the most important thing is not democracy or authoritarianism. The main point is we want competent government, effective government. And looking around the world, some democracies have done well, other democracies have done poorly. In the West, the two leading democracies, US and the UK, have done very poorly, whereas other democracies have done well. And some authoritarian countries have done okay, not all. But the key thing is that we need competent and effective government. And that's the most important thing when we're dealing with something like a virus. The next point I'd like to do is talk about global supply chains, which I mentioned earlier. And one characteristic of global supply chains of recent decades is that China has become the center of lots of global supply chains. So we're all highly dependent on China for many things: medical equipment, masks, equipment to use in our hospitals, pharmaceuticals, and so on. And so we've all discovered that even if China is the cheapest place to have many things manufactured, it's not a good idea to be overly dependent on one country, particularly when we're in the middle of a geopolitical rivalry, geopolitical tensions. And so our global supply chains are very effective from an economic point of view, but they have made many of our countries vulnerable to over-reliance on one country, China. And I think this is an area where India in the future can play an important role. India needs to, India is already a very important producer of pharmaceuticals, but we need to think of not putting all of our eggs in the China basket, diversifying supply chains so that we're not reliant on one country. And India is the obvious country to be the location for more global supply chains. The last point I'd like to mention is about international cooperation. When we have a pandemic, when we have a global problem like this, we all need to work together. All countries need to work together. We need effective international cooperation. In the past, international cooperation was often very effectively managed because the US played a big leadership role. The US played an important leadership role tackling Ebola, the pandemic in Africa, getting countries together to work together. But unfortunately, under Donald Trump, the US doesn't want to be a leader in the way it used to be. And so we have a leadership vacuum in the world at a time when we need to work together. China would like to be a leader in Asia. It would like to be a global partner. But China is losing trust all around the world. China is trying to take advantage of the global COVID-19. It's being more assertive in the East China Sea next to Japan. My Japanese friends are worried about what China is doing there. China is becoming more assertive also in the South China Sea and also with India. You know that better than me. And so China's ambition to be a leader in the world, I think it's very problematic. If you want to be a leader, you have to have trust you have to have other countries trusting you. And of course, China has lost trust because when the virus started, it covered up the virus. You shouldn't do that. You should be open, you should be transparent, but China wasn't. Then, of course, China has been doing a disinformation campaign, telling stories about it and so on. And so we're in a very difficult situation now because the world of today needs international cooperation more than ever. And international cooperation is better when you have a leader, a good leader, but we don't really have a good leader. And so at the moment, I think one idea that I think is interesting is middle powers, middle-sized countries like Australia, like India, like Germany, like Japan, getting together and trying to provide leadership in the world. The US is in a very complex situation. I don't think we can rely on that. China, I don't think we can trust China. So the rest of us, I think, have to try and lead the world through this situation. It's not easy to do, but there are a number of countries, India, Australia, Germany, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, Canada, New Zealand. So my proposal is that middle-sized countries get together. All of these countries are democracies. We all see eye to eye. We're all good friends, and try and lead the world through the problems we have today. So that's the second part of my talk. I'd like to finish off by giving a few other thoughts about restarting the Asian century after COVID-19. As I said before, when you graduate in 2 years' time, 2022, hopefully we'll be living in a post-COVID-19 world. I believe that'll be the case. I think that we're all learning about how to deal with COVID-19. There are interesting progress being made in finding a vaccine, and I think this will happen. But of course, after COVID-19, our economies will be in a bit of a mess. Our societies will be in a bit of a mess. The world will be in a bit of a mess. And young business graduates, like all of you who are starting your course today, I believe that you can play a great role in restarting the Asian century after COVID-19. Asia's great success stories, countries like Japan, Korea, Singapore, they've shown that very rapid economic development is possible. As I said before, just 50 years ago, Korea was poorer than an African country. Just back in the 1940s, Japan was destroyed by atomic bombs. They developed very rapidly. And what happens is that if you're at the bottom of the economic ladder, you can climb that ladder very quickly if you implement good policies. You can easily catch up to countries like the US and Germany if you do good economic policies. It's not rocket science. If you look at successful countries, how they've climbed the ladder and how they've done much better. The first point is openness to international trade and investment. International trade and investment is really a very important motor for economic growth. And of course, in the case of India, your openness to international trade and investment, particularly in the IT sector, has been very important. The second part of the recipe, strong investments in transport, energy and other infrastructure. Infrastructure is critical for the economy. We have to move people around, we have to move goods and services around. And if you look at countries like Singapore, Hong Kong, Korea, Japan, fantastic infrastructure. And it's no surprise that these countries have been successful. Third point, strong investment in human capital, education and health. And again, if you look at the successful countries, Japan, Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, education and health. These countries are at the top of the league table when it comes to measuring education. Japan has the highest life expectancy in the world. Educated, strong people, they are very good for the economy, very good for society. Repeating what I said before, strong and competent government. And this is government who can get things done, who can build infrastructure, who can get the economy moving. Lastly, sound macroeconomic management. This, of course, means keeping inflation under control, keeping debt under control, and so on. But the last point I'd like to emphasize, which is very important for young students like you, this is entrepreneurship and innovation. Entrepreneurs like yourself, when you graduate in 2 years' time, you play a very important role in the economy. Starting new businesses, developing new products, bringing innovation to the economy. Entrepreneurship and innovation, they are key to restarting the Asian century. And this is where students like yourselves have a key role to play in the future. I've met many Indian people through my life, visiting India. In Australia, we have 700,000 people of Indian origin living here. And of course, I've met many in America. And just in my observation, one of the great strengths of India is the dynamism of India's entrepreneurs. There's something about you guys and girls. You know how to do entrepreneurship. When I look at America, it's astonishing. Some of America's most leading companies are headed by Indians. Microsoft, one of the most successful countries in the history of the world. CEO Satya Nadella from Hyderabad. Google, again, one of the most successful countries in the history of America. Sundar Pichai. The list goes on. Vivek Sankaran from Albertsons. Sanjay Mehrotra from Micron Technology. The CEO of MasterCard, I can't pronounce the name. Ajaypal Singh Banga, and so on. Many, many successful Indians. And this entrepreneurship that Indians can bring is very important for restarting the Asian centuries, restarting the economy. But of course, Indians, you have great entrepreneurship in your own country. I must say that back in the year 2014, I was invited to chair a conference at the Infosys campus in Bengaluru. And I had the honour and privilege of meeting with Mr. Narayana Murthy. And Mr. Murthy is the co-founder of Infosys. He's been the chairman, CEO, president, chief mentor before he retired from Infosys. Mr. Murthy was listed among the 12 greatest entrepreneurs of our time by Fortune magazine. He's been described as the father of the Indian IT sector by Time magazine. And for me, meeting Mr. Murthy was one of the great events in my life. He's an amazing man. He's contributed so much to India's economic development. He's a brilliant man, a source of great inspiration, but a very humble man too, very down to earth. And so I'd like to encourage all of you students, to try and follow in the steps of India's great entrepreneurs. You're studying business, you're studying management, and looking ahead, you have the great opportunity to become entrepreneurs, to become business people, like Mr. Murthy, like Satya Nadella. And I think that you can make a great contribution in your lives, to your country, to the world by doing this. And how can you do this? Please read everything you can about India's star entrepreneurs. There's so much to learn from these people. Many of them come from humble origins. Please try and meet some of these people, because very often if they are interested in meeting young students like yourselves, try and meet them, ask them your favorite questions, learn about them, take inspiration from them. But by doing so, you'll have a very fulfilling and interesting life. You'll contribute greatly to India and the world. So I'd like to conclude my talk now. I hope I haven't been speaking for too long. But I think that today, the world is in a bit of a mess. It's a terrible situation, the most difficult situation since World War II. But looking ahead, we'll get over this at some point in time. And maybe in 2 years' time, we're starting to recover, we're starting to do better. And of course, in 2 years' time, you'll be graduating from your course, and you have a great opportunity to, with your new postgraduate diploma in management, you have a great opportunity to contribute to restarting the Asian century, restarting the Indian economy, and making a great contribution to the world. So I can just conclude by saying best wishes to you all for your future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor West, for this very interesting and motivating talk. And I'm very sure this has triggered a lot of thoughts among our students, and they would like to ask questions. So now for the next segment, next 10 or 15 minutes, we can have some student questions.
Yes, with great pleasure.
Sure. Thank you so much. So yes, students, if you have any questions, this is the time. And I think I saw somebody raise his hand while the talk was on. So if you need any, further inputs, you want any clarifications on what Professor West said, please go ahead and ask your question.
Sir, it's Raj. Hello.
Hello, Raj.
Yes,
Hello,
sir.
Raj.
Sir, as this is not an economic crisis for the world, as it is not an economic crisis for the world, sir, what is the time frame you are looking to that all the economies are coming into its normal situation? What is the time frame you are looking onto?
Quite honestly, we don't know. No one knows the future. And but I think that we're hoping in the next year or two that the virus will be mastered. We're hoping that there might be a vaccine or even a cure over this period of time, over the next 2 years, and that over that period of time, the economy will come back. But quite honestly, no one knows. But I hope in the next year or two. And of course, this fits in neatly with your studies. In 2 years' time, you'll be finished. So, with a bit of luck, the timing is perfect. I'm sorry I can't give a precise answer, but no one knows the future, and I think now, at this in this situation, no one really knows at all.
Sir, as it is not an economic crisis, the world has been stopped due to the COVID-19 and it has been locked down. That is the reason the business and the trades are not being taken place as they're normal. So I just want to ask that, sir, if the economy, if the vaccine has been invented and every country has been distributed by the vaccine, so will it be easy for all the economy or all the countries to get back into the normal situations with a push or a kick back?
The origin of this crisis is not an economic crisis. The origin is a health crisis. But the health crisis has provoked an economic crisis, and so I think we do have an economic crisis. And the economic crisis we're in is that many companies that have been affected by this have gone bankrupt. And so businessmen who've gone bankrupt cannot just jump back into business because they've lost their capital, maybe they have debts. Businessmen can't jump back in instantly. That means that all the people who are now unemployed by the crisis will not get jobs back instantly. Thirdly, again, although the origin of the crisis is a health crisis, all of our governments have now accumulated a lot of public debt to respond to the health crisis. And so that debt is going to be with us for a very, very long time. And so that will adversely affect the economy in the future. And so I agree with you that the origin of the crisis is not an economic crisis, it's a health crisis. But the health crisis has provoked a deep economic crisis with loss of capital, loss of jobs, the accumulation of lots of debt. And I think that the recovery from this will be very long and very slow, and maybe even taking 10 years. Hopefully in the next year or two, we will turn the corner and start coming back. But the world will not return to where it used to be very quickly, certainly not instantly.
I got you, sir. Thank you, sir.
I can see another student having raised his hand, Mr. Ganeshan. Please ask your question.
This is Malar. Hi.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay. It was really a wonderful speech. Thank you for that. But I still have a question regarding that. You told that we should have a global leader, right? For now, it is considered as USA, and later you told maybe China can take over or Japan can take over. But do you really think that there should always be a leader to do something? Why can't everyone collaborate together and then do something? That'll be much more better, right?
It's a very important question you raise because I come from Australia, and of course, like you in India, we love cricket. And every cricket team has to have a captain. And a captain is very important because a captain can bring people together. The captain can lead people, can help people cooperate. And I think that we don't want a captain or a leader to be a bossy, dictatorial person. We need people to sort of lead the way. And for cooperation, leadership is important, and countries will not cooperate together unless there is some type of leadership. I think it is just a reality of life. And even when you go off to work in the future and work in business, every business has a leader. Every business has a CEO, even though everyone's working in the team. So I think that leadership is important, but we need wise leadership and friendly leadership. We need to be able to trust the leader.
Yeah,
Okay,
true, but okay. Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
I'm
Please.
telling that if every person and every country knows its own responsibility, in that case also, do you feel that still we need a leader if they know their responsibilities, that yes, this is what I have to do?
We certainly do, because if, for example, at the beginning of a crisis like this, we need to be sharing information together about what's happening. And that's one thing China didn't do quickly. It didn't share information about the COVID-19 very quickly. We also, in some countries, we've had shortages of face masks and shortages of protective equipment. By working together as a team, we can help each other get access to things that are necessary. Scientists are now also working on a vaccine, and maybe the vaccine will be found in 1 or 2 countries, whereas every country in the world will want to use that vaccine. So again, we need to cooperate together to ensure that everyone who needs the vaccine can have access to the vaccine. And so I think that this being a global problem, we need global cooperation. It's not just a matter, it's impossible to solve COVID-19 by just action within an individual country.
Yeah, okay, thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we can take the next question. Abhinay, you can ask your question.
Yeah. So good morning from India, John.
Good afternoon from Australia.
Yeah. So it was very kind to listen, and we were very motivated to listen all the things that you have said. So since you have mentioned that it's a crisis situation and everybody is going to a back pace, so it is also said that in a crisis situation we also have an opportunity to move forward and we can experiment and try new things. So in what your sense would be a new opportunity that can be done to recover at a faster rate?
The one thing that is happening, I think, in many countries is that we're all now using digital technologies more than we did in the past. And I think an acceleration in digitalization is a trend that has been very important, and that is improving our economies. Just now, I can't fly to Kolkata to meet you, but of course we can all now use Zoom to meet together. So that's possible. Electronic commerce is now accelerated. People maybe can't go shopping like they used to before, but electronic commerce is possible. So digitalization is something which is happening, accelerating. But as I was discussing with your director earlier, digitalization is a very great thing which is helping our economies, but at the same time we have a digital divide. Digitalization is good for people who have access to the internet and access to internet infrastructure. And so digitalization is a good thing, but our governments need to work to try and provide universal access to the internet to everyone. And I think in India, particularly in the villages, it's very difficult to have access to that. I would hope also that in a world that is becoming more fragmented between different countries, that countries realize that through a pandemic like this and through climate change and other things, we all have to work together. So hopefully, over time, we can learn to work more effectively together.
Okay,
Thank you so much,
Abhishek Bhattacharya.
Yes, ma'am. Hello, good morning, sir. Thank you for your great speech.
Thank you.
Hello,
Hi.
sir. Am I audible?
Yes, good. Nice to see you. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Not now. I can't hear you.
Abhishek, we can't hear you.
I'm trying, sir. Hello.
Yeah, now I can.
I think, sir, I would like to ask you one question. During this pandemic situation, not only for the COVID, but also we are suffering from this supply chain failure. Okay. During this, I talked about the one very question. Should we go for this essentially after the pandemic, or in some more time will play some days from our journey to take the backward to people?
I couldn't hear the question. Can someone repeat
No,
it to
even
me?
I couldn't get it.
Can you write somewhere this?
Can you put it in the chat box, Abhishek? And in the meantime, maybe we can take the next question and then come back to you. Okay. So Mayank, please go ahead with your question.
Good morning, sir. It was a very insightful speech by you. Thank you so much. So my question is, with investments coming in India, like Foxconn, Qualcomm, Facebook, Google, everyone is now shifting their attention to India, and with Jio and Reliance emerging as a power, with 5G network coming in, and people slowly shifting their investment from China to India. So how do you think India is gonna emerge as a power in the world?
Thank you for the question. It's a very important question. This actually is a very great opportunity for India because, firstly, people have realized that there's too much concentration of our supply chains in China, that we need to diversify our supply chains out of China. We don't take everything out of China, but diversify some. And secondly, wage costs have been rising in China of recent years. And so it's a very good opportunity for India because you have a lower cost structure and you're a good place to diversify. Thirdly, India being a democracy, you're a very good friend with the US, Australia, other countries. So the trust that we have with India is also an important factor that India can use. So this is an important opportunity for India to accelerate its development by getting more investment and participating more in global supply chains.
So also, as like with Modi as our prime minister, and slowly you can say the bond between the countries are increasing. How do you think Australia and India can work together and emerge as a power in the world economy?
Australia and India can work together in many, many ways, and we already are. And I think maybe 1 month or 6 weeks ago, we had a virtual summit between the Prime Minister of Australia and Mr. Modi. And in that, we elevated the partnership between our two countries. And it's now a strategic partnership. And in that, they came up with a big list of things to work on. And so we are getting closer and closer to India. And so there's a press release that has all the different areas of cooperation, but we can cooperate on all sorts of things. And so I think that looking ahead, the Australia-India partnership, which is already strong, will become stronger and stronger.
Thank you so much, sir. It was very nice speaking.
Thank you.
Okay, Abhishek, did you put the question in chat or will you like to try once again?
No, ma'am. I will ask you.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Good morning, sir. Am I audible now?
I can hear you now.
Hello, sir. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are. You are.
Hello.
Yes, you
Yes,
are
sir.
audible.
Hello. Yeah, thank you, sir. Sir, I would like to ask you the question is actually during this COVID situation, we are also suffering from failure of global supply chain. Okay. So my main question is, in future, after this black swan is solved, and then in future, should we close some more doors of our economy, or do we go for the open economy also? So what should be the great decisions in future after these black swans?
And I think opening the economy is the most important thing to do. When we have a recession, rising unemployment like we have now, it's very tempting for governments to implement protectionism, close their markets to international trade and investment. That's the wrong thing to do. We all need to import stuff from other countries, and to import we have to export. And so open markets is very important. But I think for India, like everywhere, foreign investment is a very important thing for the economy. Foreign investment brings in technology, modern management practices, new ideas. And so protectionism is the worst thing you can do. If you look back in history, in the Great Depression, the 1930s, the silliest thing they did at the time was to close markets. And if you look at why the world has developed so much since the end of the Second World War, open markets for trade and investment is probably the most important thing.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Shomodeep?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Am I audible?
Hello?
Hello? Am I audible, sir?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, sir. Thanks a lot for this insightful talks that you have delivered in this session. So, sir, I am quite enthusiastic to know about a particular thing that we all know that international relationship and policies, they are always lining up with some dynamic nature, right? Means we call that international policies are never static, and there is no friend and foe in international politics. So currently I have gone through one of the articles in Business Standards. It is saying that India is going to get some initiative, and it has planned for some initiative in the healthcare management system, and for that ADB, Asian Development Bank, as well as Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, they are willing to invest in India and finance India for that purpose. Now we all know that AIIB has its headquarters in China, and China is having most of the checks in that bank. So what is your opinion that can we move forward by just sidelining one country which was once upon a time the major production hub of the entire world? So can we move forward with that, or can it be fruitful that we can move out the delivery centers or the production centers out of China and bring it to India? Means how much fruitful and how much productive that would be. So what are your views, sir, on that?
Obviously right now there are many tensions between China and the US, and China and other countries. You know, for the world to survive and succeed in the future, we all have to live together, and we all have to be able to live with China. And so hopefully in the future, once this crisis is solved, hopefully we can have constructive relationships with China, even if China is a communist system. And so I think our objective should be to have positive relations with China, and I think that China needs to be more friendly to other countries, including India. Moving some of the supply chains out of China, I think, is important to diversify supply chains, but I don't think we should move everything out of China. I think it's just a matter of rebalancing a little bit. And China is a very important part of the world economy. It has lots of technology, it has lots of skilled people, lots of good companies. The main problem is that we have over-invested in China, and maybe if we take 10 or 20% out and move it to India, maybe something like that is a good idea. So I think that we all need to work together and live together with China. I think we need to rebalance the economic relationship a little bit, but we shouldn't try and move everything out of China.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Hello?
Ritika, you have a question, I can see?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please go ahead.
Sir, as you talked about Asia-centric, so China will obviously want to be a leader in this Asia-centric world order when it becomes. So, what will be the right path for India to sideline and better relations with China, or become a Asian leader itself with the help of US and other countries?
China obviously would like to become a leader, and but I think that India is a very important country, and India should play a leadership role too. And I think it is natural for India to work very closely with other democracies like Japan, US, Australia. But I don't think we should sideline China. I think we need to try and work together with China in a constructive way. And we need to try and encourage China to be constructive with us. And so it's a very complicated situation. I don't know if we can succeed in doing this. Having countries like US, Japan, Australia ganging up against China, I don't think it's a wise thing to do. I think we need to somehow try and work together with China, encourage China to be more friendly to other countries and to be more responsible as a leader, and that we all work together. But and China also needs to realize that although it's big, all the other countries, democracies in Asia, if we added them all together, middle powers like India, Korea, Japan, Australia, Indonesia, together we're a very big group. So, I think we need to try and work together rather than fight and quarrel. But it's not a very easy situation to manage. I think that, part of the problem is that we have Donald Trump has an election campaign in November, so there's so much politics involved in what the US is doing. In 2 years' time also, Xi Jinping actually has an election himself, because Xi Jinping would like to be given a third term, and maybe a fourth term, as head of the Communist Party. And to do that, he needs to have the confidence of the other people in the Communist Party. So maybe Xi Jinping is playing tough, being a tough guy for his own political purposes. And so maybe until after the US election and after the Chinese election in 2 years' time, maybe we'll have a more constructive atmosphere. But I think that election time in the US is a crazy time in that country. And so between now and November, we're going to be in a bit of a crazy world.
Okay, now we've almost close to, the ending time. So, sir, can we take one more question, Professor West?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so Neelam, please ask your question.
Hello?
Neelam?
Good afternoon, sir.
Hello,
Am I
Neelam.
audible?
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, sir. Am I audible to everyone?
I can
Yes, you
hear you
are.
well.
Okay. Good afternoon, sir, and good morning to all the faculty members and fellow students. Thank you, sir, for addressing us and sharing your insights. Actually, at a point of time, you were talking about a global leader, and I guess Malar has also asked the same question, similar question rather. But what I wanted to ask that when means in the corporate world, when we have a leader, basically they share the vision and goals that is aligned to the company's goals and visions. So what I wanted to ask is, what would be the global leader's goals, and how will he manage to how will he manage to motivate all the countries to basically voluntarily follow him or maybe support him?
You're right now in the middle of the pandemic crisis. The global leader should be one trying to encourage people to be open and transparent with each other about what's happening in their own countries, so that we know what's happening. Secondly, a leader should encourage countries to share lessons from their experience because we can all learn from each other. Thirdly, a leader should be encouraging cooperation between countries in terms of doing research for a vaccine and research for a medicine to tackle the pandemic. And also, a leader should be encouraging the countries that come up with the vaccine, that discover the vaccine, to share that vaccine with other countries so that the whole world can benefit from such a vaccine and any medicine that's discovered. Obviously, poorer countries or countries like India, maybe you suffer more from a crisis like the pandemic. You need to have access to vaccines, and a leader should encourage countries that come up with the vaccine to share that vaccine with as many people as possible, and so that the vaccine actually is used by people who have the highest priority. And of course, the highest priority people should be healthcare workers. We need healthcare workers to not be exposed to the virus. We need to have older people like me who are perhaps more vulnerable to the crisis, and also people in poorer countries. So there's many areas where a leader should try and bring people together, and so that we work as a global team, because there's a global challenge with global effects.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, I think we don't have time for questions. We've already crossed the time. So thank you so much, Professor West. This was such an interesting talk. What I also personally liked about it is how you discussed the lessons we can take from history. How countries have kind of risen from the ashes and become successful. So learning from your legacy, learning from the strengths that we have was really very good. You also very nicely talked about the current realities and challenges countries are facing, and the opportunities we have to convert this crisis into something good. As managers, I'm very sure students as would-be managers will understand that the organization is not working in isolation. So managers need to have a very keen understanding of the environment and what's going on around them. So your talk actually helped us, understand that current reality and picture, very, very well. And that it was so full of optimism that how students can now, after 2 years, take on new challenges and maybe look into innovation and entrepreneurships. So on the whole, it was a very, very good talk, sir. I personally enjoyed it a lot as well. And I'm very sure my students have also enjoyed it. So thank you so much. And we look forward to many more such interactions in the future. On behalf of the entire IMI family, I would like to thank you one more time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure to meet you across Zoom. And for me, it was a privilege to meet you all and to talk with the students. And always, of course, the question and answer is the most exciting part. And I think I've learned many things from that too. So I look forward to staying in touch and meeting you one day.
We hope that too.
Thank you very
So,
much.
Arunda.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.